Today we're going to be talking about the election. If you live under a rock, you might not have known that last Tuesday, Donald J. Trump was elected President of the United States. Again. Listen, it took me a week to make this video because I was in a period of mourning. I was in a depressive episode. I think we were all in a collective depressive episode because this presidency will have consequences for the rest of our lives, maybe for the rest of our children's lives. And I want this video and the comments section to be a place where we can commiserate because it's important to feel your feelings. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. There's been a lot of hay made over why Kamala Harris lost and how it could be possible that Donald Trump won. I completely understand the kind of incredulous, unbelieving attitude around a Trump victory. Personally, I did believe that in 2016, the Trump victory was an aberration. I thought that it was a deviation from the norm. I fear it seems to have become the norm. Or it was the norm all along and we were just waiting for the opportunity to come out. I think that in 2016, a lot of people thought that the Trump victory was an aberration because we just hadn't seen anything like him before. For people like me in 2016, we were able to comfort ourselves by saying that, well, Hillary won the popular vote. So really, this is not the will of the majority of the Americans. It's because, the people in Iowa, no offense to shout out to the people in Iowa, but the Pennsylvanians, I'm looking at you. Because of, a handful of votes from the Electoral College, Trump ascended to the presidency. We can't say that this time, unfortunately, because Donald Trump won the popular vote and the electoral vote. The other reason why I waited to make this video is that I wanted to see what was going to happen in Congress. The day that Trump was elected, we also knew that the Republicans had control of the Senate, but we were still holding out for the House of Representatives. Today, it has been projected by The Hill that the Republicans will win the House of Representatives. So they'll have a majority in the House, they'll have a majority in the Senate, and they will have the presidency. They'll also have the conservative Supreme Court. L's, we take those. I can't stop losing. Listen, I think that it's interesting. I've heard a lot of different people talk about the different reasons that Harris might have lost. And I think that ultimately it is a kind of combination of several different reasons. I don't think that there's one singular reason that she lost the presidency. But I think that there are several contributing factors, some that mattered to a lesser degree than others. For example, I heard a few people say that they think that her shift to center, and more like her shift to right, in the way that she was talking about the border, the way that she was talking about, trans people, the way that she was parading around Liz Cheney. I heard a few leftists say that they believed that that was one of the reasons that she lost the election. And I fear those people think that the United States is much further left than it actually is. The electorate, that is. I don't think that her moving farther left would have helped her in her campaign whatsoever. In fact, I think I saw an exit poll, I'll try to put it on the screen if I can find it, that said that one of the issues that voters had with Kamala's campaign is that it was quote-unquote too radical, which is very unfortunate. I was volunteering in Pennsylvania and I saw a sign in Chester County that said, Kamala Harris is a Marxist. And I just thought to myself, I wish that she was. The gap between reality and perception is huge. And being a black woman definitely doesn't help with that because black people and women and minorities of all kind are always viewed as more leftist than they actually are. And Kamala certainly wasn't running a leftist campaign in any sense of the word. I also heard some people say that they think that she lost because of the war in Gaza. I think that this gives the American people a lot more credit than they actually deserve, because genocide is not something that would keep the majority of the American electorate from voting for a candidate. It would be nice if we lived in a world in which that would mean that somebody would not be able to ascend to the presidency, but that's not the world that we currently live in. And I think that it might have made a difference in certain areas, like in Michigan. I think that, the Arab American population in Michigan might have made a dent in Kamala's kind of electorate. But overall, I don't think that that's why she lost at all. In fact, I think the majority of Americans do not care about foreign policy. That was definitely not top of mind for them. And, Kamala's policy via Israel was terrible, was indeed terrible. She tried to, throughout the campaign, become more and more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. But there really wasn't any kind of justice and any kind of strong statement made, in defense of the Palestinian people. I don't think that Gaza was the reason that she lost this election, but it might have been a contributing factor. I think that one of the bigger reasons for this electoral loss is how Americans currently feel about the economy. I think that for a lot of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, over 70% of Americans say that they're living paycheck to paycheck, they view how they're doing right now as an indictment against the current administration. Whether or not that's fair, you can argue that, economic policy takes years to set into effect. You could argue that, the inflation that people are experiencing, it's come down from COVID-19 levels, and you could say that that's the success of, the Biden administration. I'm sure they'd take credit for that. I'm sure Jerome Powell might have something to say about that. Jerome, you might be losing your job, Jerome. Trump is coming for you, Jerome. Did you see that video of Jerome Powell where the reporter is asking him if he's afraid that Trump is going to fire him?
Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
Do you believe the president has the power to fire or demote you, and has the Fed determined the legality of a president demoting at will any of the other governors with leadership positions?
Not permitted under the law.
He is so blasé. He's like, what does he say? He's like, that's not legal. It's not legal. He doesn't care. It's very funny to me. And I think they first ask him, like, oh, are you worried that that a Trump presidency, that he would fire you? And he's like, no, he's not worried. He's not worried at all. Returning to the question about the economy, I think that Americans do feel that they are in a very bad economic situation, whereas economists and the Biden administration have continuously gave the messaging that, in fact, this is the best economy in the world, that inflation is down, that GDP is up, and all of these labor market economic indicators that are supposed to demonstrate that, in fact, we have a strong economy. But people still don't feel that way, by and large. And, it's a big country. And so, there can be people who are living on 100K saying that they're living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm not, listen, the 100K people, I'm not devaluing that. I'm just saying that. So these are self-reported a lot of times, these questions about how the American economy is doing. And quite frankly, I think it was interesting, the conversation that Nancy Pelosi was having with Bernie Sanders, where she said that she disagreed with Bernie's assessment that the Democratic Party was no longer the party of working class people. And I think that he was actually spot on there. He talked about how the Democratic Party has not, propositioned to increase the minimum wage, that they haven't ran on universal health care, that they've failed to deliver really, life-changing economic reform for people, or to expand Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. And Nancy Pelosi said that she totally disagreed with him with that. And I would love to know, from Nancy Pelosi's perspective, what was the reason that the Democrats lost this election. I will say, though, that in terms of, still talking about Nancy Pelosi, I think that the fact that Nancy Pelosi helped push Joe Biden out of the presidency, out of running again, was strategically sound. I think that the amount of time that Kamala had to prepare and to campaign was to her detriment. And so, people say that Trump has been campaigning for the last 8 years, and he basically has. I mean, he's now a permanent fixture of American society. Whereas, Kamala, up until like a year ago, people didn't really know much about her. She was in the background of the Biden administration. We didn't really see her very much. And so, yeah, I think that the actual timeline definitely was one contributing factor. For that, we can blame Joe Biden, because I think that Biden and his staffers, they knew that he was on the cognitive decline, right? I think we all knew that he was on the cognitive decline, and Biden had said previously that in fact he was going to be a one-term president, and he reneged on that promise until he had a debate performance that was so disastrous that he couldn't possibly continue to run. So that one, I think we can lay at Biden's feet, honestly. The other thing is obviously sexism and racism. Everyone's going to be like, boo, boo. Listen, this is Trump's America. No, I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious that it played a role. We can sit here and argue about how much of a role that it played. And I, for one, actually was getting frustrated at some of the identity politic-y defenses of Kamala, because I have a lot of critiques of Kamala and of her policies and of her campaign. I was getting frustrated at people who would dismiss any critique of Kamala with, oh, well, she's a woman. Oh, well, people are holding her up to a higher standard. We have to admit that racism and sexism played a not significant role in this outcome. Like AOC said, not to quote Aouk, but if Kamala Harris had been Tom Harris, we don't know what the outcome of this would have been. And I think that a few different gender and race related aspects are at play here. Like I said, first of all, the gender and race making people think that she is more leftist or more radical, which I would prefer, but most Americans don't want that, than she actually is. And then also the gender and race stuff, it is very obvious, even to somebody who is not paying attention, that Kamala Harris has credentials that Donald Trump does not have. Okay. Well, let's be honest. Donald Trump is a criminal, right? He's a felon. In fact, those crimes are about to go away because the Department of Justice. Did you guys know you have 20 minutes? It's not funny, but it's like, what can you do? So the race thing, the gender thing, it played a role. And not in helping. It played a role in hurting her. And I think that it is evident that United States society, American society, is not as progressive as sometimes we like to think. This is another thought that I had that I wanted to share, is that from certain perspectives, it looks like the Democrats have won the culture war in America. It really does seem that way. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you, all of the major newspapers, okay, the New York Times, the New Yorker, NPR, center left. Those people, they vote Democrat. They just do, okay? And that's why Jeff Bezos, interfering in our elections, interfering in the elections, that's why Jeff Bezos did not want WAPO to endorse, because he knew that they would endorse Kamala. And obviously for Bezel, that is not what he wants. He wants those sweet, sweet Trump tax breaks. That's just, it is what it is. And so, the mainstream newspapers, and then the celebrity class, the Beyoncés, the Taylor Swifts, all these people coming out and giving their Kamala Harris endorsement. And online, also, I also live in an echo chamber, so that could be a reflection. But online, the memes, the Kamala is brat. You think that we won the culture war, but it turns out that the culture war, in fact, is not reflective of the reality on the ground. Surprisingly enough, Kamala is brat was not enough to convince the average American voter to get out there and vote for Kamala Harris. Strange. So I think that those elements, gender, race, the economy, the ties to the Biden administration, which was already deeply unpopular to begin with, all of that worked against her, for sure. The deeply unpopular war in Gaza, I think that didn't help. That definitely did not help. But I will say that we are cooked. For this next 4 years, hell, for the next 40, we're cooked. We're cooked. I cannot sit here and give you some positive spin on things and be like, we're gonna regroup, we're gonna organize, if we even can organize. If we even can continue to organize. If the right to assembly isn't taken away. I wrote down a couple of things that I wanted to point out that we might see with the Trump presidency. The first thing that Americans and people of the world who love justice and peace need to understand is that Trump isn't good for anyone but Trump and other billionaires. Can we talk about Elon Musk for a second? Wait, we'll talk about Elon Musk. The first and potentially most long-lasting thing is going to be the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, which was already conservative, where Trump was already able to appoint 3 judges, he will potentially be able to appoint 2 more, making it so that we will have a conservative Supreme Court for the rest of our lives. The conservative Supreme Court majority for life, I'm not going to lie, this is actually what compelled me to vote for Kamala Harris, because I don't support all of Kamala Harris's policies. I don't agree with her on many things, but having these conservatives in the Supreme Court and knowing that we're going to have all of these different groups being attacked. Because look at what the Supreme Court has already done, okay? Repealed Roe v. Wade, repealed affirmative action, repealed Chevron, okay? Rules and regulations are out the window! They're out the window! And considering that Trump will have a Republican Congress and the conservative Supreme Court, it will be considerably easier for him to push through his terrible policy. It's going to be deregulation. It's going to be going after government agencies. Department of Education, goodbye, as if we actually had the luxury of worsening American education any further than it already is. This election is actually, in part, demonstrating how low critical thinking is in this country. And he's actually going to go after the Department of Education in order to make it even worse. It's almost like the ruling class wants us to be uneducated so that we can keep them in power and keep enriching themselves and their friends. And while I'm on that point, let me just say, Elon Musk, count your fucking days, okay? This motherfucker, you're not even from here. You're not even from here. Y'all have so much beef with immigrants. Take Elon Musk first. Take Elon Musk first. Because quite frankly, it makes no sense how this man is having this big of an impact on an election. Oh, don't worry, it's just like your friendly neighborhood billionaire buying up like a huge space on social media, forcing you to see his tweets and then interfering in our elections. Don't worry. He pisses me off. Seeing him jump up and down that stage like a fucking cheerleader, a Trump cheerleader, is disgusting. I mean, what's very interesting is that as soon as Trump won, you know whose stock went up? Tesla. You know who became richer? I think 10 times richer, actually. Elon Musk. You're disgusting. You're disgusting. And what's even crazier is that I believe Elon Musk's daughter is trans. So it's like, you don't even give a fuck about your own kids, right? Because under Donald Trump, trans rights, it's over. It's finished. the white women who voted for Trump, we need to talk. We need to have a conversation. I saw a woman for Trump sign in Pennsylvania. The fact that Donald Trump is an alleged aside, don't know why we're putting that aside, but the fact that he is a menace towards women aside, his administration has openly stated, J.D. Vance, right, chuckle fuck over here, has openly stated that he would try to ban abortion and try to limit IVF to promote the traditional family. And what's interesting to me is that I suppose some women feel that they will never be in that position to get an abortion or anything like that. But we've already seen that the women who have died from the repeal of Roe v. Wade, some of them were not trying to get an abortion. In fact, some of them had complications during pregnancy and died as a result of those because they couldn't get the necessary care. I fear if you are a person who can get pregnant, this is a huge loss. It's very evident that women died because of that SCOTUS decision, and we're just going to see the turn back, the backsliding of women's rights, maybe 50 years? 60, give or take? I mentioned the economy as one of the reasons that I think that Americans voted for Donald Trump. The interesting thing about that is that Trump's plan is terrible for the economy, and that's why the majority of economists are against it. Almost unanimously, they're against it. 15 Nobel Prize winning economists wrote a letter to say how much they are actually against it. But the kinds of people who are voting for Trump are not the kinds of people who are reading the work of Nobel Prize economists. And yes, we can have a conversation about how, people don't have access to these things, paywalls and elite education, and education is gatekept in America based on class, and those things are completely true. Trump's tariff plan will make things more expensive in the United States because American companies are the ones who have to pay the tariffs. Not to mention that it will potentially start a trade war with China. So we might get the trade war, inflation in the United States, and higher prices for American consumers. And this is really to say nothing about the tax cuts for the rich, which are just going to increase the inequality that was already rapidly growing in this country. For healthcare, let's not even talk about it. He says he's going to repeal Obamacare and he's going to replace it with a concept of a plan. I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But he will be. All that shit that was for minorities, all of that progress that we made, any racial gender minority, it's over. It's finished. It's done. Okay? The scholarships that are only for Black students, done. They already tried with the Fearless Fund, which was the fund for Black female business owners that they brought to court on the basis of racial discrimination, on the basis that it discriminates against people that are not Black. Right. Right. Okay. It's so ridiculous. I'm sorry. It makes no sense. It would be like saying that having scholarships for students that have high financial need, is discriminating against students that are wealthy. It's like the purpose is that these people have it harder to get into these institutions in the first place. That's why they need the money. The age of DEI is dead, okay? In fact, this is the Hamilton backlash. I will say that. This is the Hamilton backlash because we had Obama, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. And listen, I'm not saying I don't agree with what Obama did. He did things in Yemen. He with the drone bombings in Sudan, in Libya. I don't agree with the policies. The point is that this country is reactionary, right? And so seeing a Black person in the White House, we should have known that we were going to have to pay. The cost would be severe. The gays, it's over for the gays, J.D. Vance does not support gay marriage. He does not. He keeps trying to walk it back. That man is insane. He's even, the thing about J.D. Vance is that for the first time in my life, I will hope and pray that Donald Trump does not drop dead. Because if J.D. Vance ascends to the presidency, it's over. It's over. It's over. It's finished. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's finished. It's done. Because Trump is an idiot, but he doesn't have an ideology. Okay? He doesn't have, look at him. He's a clown. He's an entertainer. Okay? You think Trump cares about gay people? I mean, I think he's a little homophobic, maybe, but he doesn't deeply care. Even, with the trans issue, he doesn't deeply care. And that's because he's not even, he's not really religious. He pretends to be Christian. He doesn't give a fuck about Christianity. J.D. Vance? J.D.? No, J.D. believes what he's saying, I fear. He believes what he's saying. Oh, brother, how can this be? Oh my God, the pain. So yeah, I guess I'll actually be praying for Donald Trump's sustained health, which I could have never said before. I think that this is probably the worst possible outcome that we could have had. A Republican Senate, a Republican House, a conservative Supreme Court, and a Trump presidency. The environment, it's lights out, literally. Literally, it's lights out for the environment. The polar bears are fucked, okay? The ice is melting. Climate change, that 3 times renewable energy, it's finished. Paris Accords, dead. It's all dead. I'm not trying to be, it's hard because I don't want to be doomer, like, oh, doomerism, like, we're all fucked, nothing will ever get better. But to be actually serious about what could potentially happen in these 4 years, we need to wait and see the amount of devastation that will be wrought to our planet, to our country. We have to wait and see. And I am sad that we are in this situation. I really am. When people say, what can we do? I think that, we can organize in local communities. We can vote in our local elections. We can join, a local organization like the Working Families Party. We can continue to agitate and resist. But it does appear that that is going to be very challenging over the next 4 years. And I want to be realistic about that. I came on here, I'm going to put the question to you guys. First of all, why do you think, the $1 million question, why do you think that Kamala Harris lost the election? Put your theories in the comments below. And, the second question, what do you think will be the worst outcome of this presidency? I think that there are very easily kind of definable things that will happen because of this presidency that will affect marginalized groups, like certain Supreme Court decisions and things of that nature. But there are also things that are quite intangible that will happen as a result of this presidency, like white supremacists being emboldened all across America. I also forgot to mention that one of the reasons that Trump's economic policy is terrible is that he wants to deport a large section of our workforce in the greatest mass deportation this country has ever seen. Then there's the mass deportations themselves. Let's hope that they don't just start throwing people in trucks that look vaguely foreign. And listen, don't think because I'm saying all of this about Trump that I love the Democratic Party and I love Kamala Harris, because that is not the case. I consider myself to be on the left. I am not a leftist that believes that there are no differences between the Republican and the Democratic Party. I am disappointed and disillusioned with the Democratic Party, but I continue to vote Democrat because I recognize that all of the things that I just mentioned would not happen to the same extent that that will happen under a Trump presidency. I don't want a conservative Supreme Court. I don't. I don't want environmental regulations to go away. I don't want to have dirty air and dirty water. But this is the situation. This is the reality. And I think that we can only accept it The next 4 years are definitely going to be very challenging, but let's take this time to regroup and to build power locally through local organizations, get in contact with your local DSA, with your local Working Families Party, participate in mutual aid, get to know your neighbors, all of the things. And let's hope that we can make it to the inauguration. Goodbye!